You never do. There's always you got to have a checklist.
Yeah, just a thing to run through. So, right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Command AI, week number 8.
Hello,
and
everyone.
Yeah, and you'll notice we've got a third amigo with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Okay, this is going to be a fun one. What else you got there? What can we expect? Okay,
That's all.
Okay. Are you familiar with Raymmar?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so like I've bought their little device that they've got as a bunch of hotkeys that work with Raymmar. Yeah, but theoretically you can make them work with anything, and I'm looking forward to that because I'm just going to load it up full of.
Is it like a Stream Deck?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's basically a tiny little square keyboard that you can presumably program. But anyway, I'm looking forward to that so I can do things like this.
I'm excited to see more companies tinkering with devices and hardware.
I would love, yeah, that is cool. There's a YouTuber I like called Snazzy Labs, and he's got like I think he's releasing like a little escape button or something like that. That's like an old MacBook. But let's introduce you.
Yeah.
Do you want to lay down the?
Sure, I'll introduce myself. I'm Raymmar. I am the CMO at DxOS, at a company called DxOS. And I'm also a tinkerer on the web. I've been building websites since like 2012, first with WordPress, then Webflow, and now I would say I'm more of a vibe coder. So I was went from the no code world into the vibe code world. I'm fairly technical in a lot of things, and I dabble and build with AI, and I'm kind of on the cutting edge of some of this tech with infrastructure and things we're building on the back end. But yeah, anyway, happy to join the conversation and chat about whatever comes up.
Yeah. So I've been seeing on your on Twitter, just your Replit stuff and getting personally my favorite vibe code tool, to be honest, but we'll probably get into that a little bit later on. Cool. So formalities out the way. I'll start the show officially with my little introduction, and then we'll get cracking on this week's AI news, if I can do it without messing up. Welcome to Command AI, the show where we press Command F on the internet's AI news and somehow still can't find our sanity. I'm Samuel Gregory, and this is Kabaza and Raymmar. And we're here to decode the weekly chaos in AI web design and development. This week, we have $6 billion company vanishes overnight. Vibe coding app hits 100 million. Ends the CLI race. Is this the end of app dev as we know it? Opencode drama. Are we getting dumber with AI? And Anthropic uses blackmail when pressured. But we'll get into all that on this week's episode. Nice. So IO. I'm presuming you're scrubbed up on everything that's been going on. Hopefully, it's hard to escape, really. But our first, well, I've got plenty of thoughts on the IO drama. Do you wanna take us through it, Kabaza? What you've been reading and what you've been hearing?
Yeah, so apparently there is another company called IO, and this is similar to the company from Johnny Ive, who Sam Altman from OpenAI acquired for $6.5 billion, if I'm not wrong. Similar name and apparently similar product. They reached out to Sam Altman. They pitched him for $10 million only. Compare that to 6.5 billion. And Sam Altman didn't accept. And apparently later on, they asked again, and OpenAI rejected again, saying that their product is not similar and something like that. But apparently now they have they are suing OpenAI because the name is the same. Well, it's pronounced the same. And the product is maybe very similar. We don't know that, but that's the interesting part.
I like it. Yeah, like it's almost like they've stolen everything. It's almost like it's so bizarre that it can't be true. Like I don't know what to make of it. And I was going to show you as well. Have you seen the device, Raymmar? Have you seen what IO are doing?
Yeah, I did.
let me share that and we can watch it real quick. Gosh, gotta learn this thing. Share screen. It's pretty cool. Obviously, this guy is I don't know if you can hear that, can you, to be honest, but this this device sits in your ear and you can see him here. He's like talking with his friends at this dinner table. Obviously he's not, because he's doing a TED talk, but he's asking to enhance the voice of these two people in front of him because he can barely hear them. And then he's subsequently asking a baby to shut up because there's a baby crying, and here's him, turn that baby down and things like that. So it's an
How dare you?
Yeah. It's a pretty cool device, but I suppose the drama kind of comes into play when we're thinking like the name is the same and the device is the same, and I just don't think that, I don't know.
But again, do you know it's the same? Like, you know, like we don't really know what OpenAI was going to build. It's just the name is really what they're going after, the IO name. I also, you know, like, no offense, but nobody's going to wear that fucking hockey puck in their ear.
Yeah.
You know? Like that's the thing with all these folks. It's like, and I don't know, I have no love for like stealing people's shit. And it just seems like OpenAI, like all these AI companies are just ingesting everything they can. They're like, screw it, it's all ours. You know, it's in the public domain. It's basically ours, you know? And so to me, this is just another, like, we're just going to do whatever we want. We're big. We got more money. Come fight us in the, you know, like in the courtroom, and we'll do whatever. Right. Like, I just don't think they have any real scruples over there. They know winner takes all at the end of this thing, and all this stuff will take years to litigate. And so they just don't care. Like, I honestly think it's pretty gross, but that's what it comes down to at a high level, I think.
This is another episode of Silicon Valley. Again, I'm repeating that every week, but it's literally that, like, we are living that show live. We see that every week. I don't know if you've seen that, Raymmar, or not.
I'm trying to get to that 3 comma club, son. I want a car that doors that open like this, not like this. I want doors that open like this.
ROI, radio on the internet.
Do I have to have watched the show to understand?
It's a requirement, like really. So I fundamentally, I have an issue with the fundamental of this product, like the premise of this product. It's very similar to Rabbit R1, if you remember that, or the human AI pin. The idea is that these companies are building an external device, a hardware, and they are putting some AI on it, and that's supposed to do some work that can't be done somewhere else, and therefore you need to buy their physical product. And I don't get that idea, because we have a smartphone, and our smartphones are much faster, much better from every perspective. The smartphone is better. So I don't get it. Like, why would you wear, as you said, like, why would you wear this big head? It's not even a headset. What, that big thing in your ear? And why does it need to be a physical, like, big product on your ear? If it's not just for branding and to, you know,
I mean,
to
AirPods
show that you have
a hard time sticking in your ear, let alone some big like thing. Like, you know, this makes sense in a studio. I'm here trying to get good audio. I'm trying to isolate everything. Like, okay. But I, like, unless I'm flying, I never wear these out in public, you know? And you can see they're pretty beat up. Like, these things have seen better days, you know? But I just don't think, like Kabar said, I don't want to carry. I don't want to carry my phone, let alone like a third device. Like, I already have a hard enough time. Keys, wallet, cell phone. That's it. I got all that. That's my routine. Nothing else is going to join that routine. You know, like the AirPods sometimes come with me if I'm like going on a walk or something, but very, very rarely am I like taking more things with me or looking to have like some extra device that then has to talk to my phone to be effective. It's like, come on, what are you actually doing here?
So what they are trying to do to understand it from their perspective as well, they are trying to appear more in social media and get people talking about them. That's the reason they are going after a physical product like the AI pin that looked like crazy. That there's a projector like projecting like kind of like
hand?
a display on your hand that is very useless. Like you cannot even like, do you know your passwords? You're gonna log in your accounts with that thing. No, that's not gonna happen. Or with Rabbit R1, like very orange, from what's it called, like the teen engineering company.
Yeah, teenage
So
engineering. Yeah.
Teenage engineering. They
But
are trying to.
those things were all dead on arrival anyway. You know, like they're
Yeah.
just they made a splash, and then kind of
They're
like the
trying.
Apple Vision Pro, like people just got hyped up for a week and then it was over. You know.
I'm going to be like, I am one of these people though that just want this ever-present AI, because like I hate getting out my phone, and I do it around the kitchen. Like if I could just ask to message someone, or like do this, or what is that, and how do I do this? I'm constantly asking questions in my head. So I want something to like just be around me. I just don't want it to be a hockey thing on the side of my head, and I don't want it to be noticeable and unintrusive. Maybe it's like a pin.
But people already have houses full of Alexas or Apple devices or phones or iPads or laptops, or like your TV has microphones in it. Like there's no shortage of microphones around you. So
no, there is something better. Neuralink.
Yeah, sure.
So you're gonna get that implemented.
We're probably a decade away from that being any kind of mainstream, though, but I agree, like all roads lead to just plugging into the matrix directly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a bit of a sneaky thing. I don't know how much of it is true, or how much crossover there is, but ultimately they've been taken down while this dispute is taking place over the name specifically. But there are mentions by Sam of a similar.
They'll win. The acquisition will happen now. The check will be insignificant. The other thing is, like, I don't think Johnny Ives is like, he had his moment. Like, it's very rare. It's like when you drop that killer, single album, and you like had your heyday, and then they try to like do the comeback tour. It's like it's never gonna be the same. Just somebody else.
Time and a place thing.
Somebody else is gonna do the thing. It's not gonna be some reboot. Almost ever. I just can't imagine. Like if I had to bet money, I wouldn't bet on a reboot. I'd bet on some obscure startup coming out of the blue and doing something that a big company wouldn't even be thinking about or attempting.
Speaking of which, the next story is one of yours, Raymmar. That is a favorite tool of ours, and in fact, probably because I'm logged into mine. But Replit.
Yeah, I'm about to just quit everything I do and just only start tweeting about Replit. Every time I tweet about Replit, it goes viral.
Yeah.
They just made this announcement. Going from 10 million to 100 million ARR, which is wild. In the last 6 months, so the company's been around for 10 years, and in the last 6 months, they go from 10 million to 100 million. I mean, I remember when I was like doing Webflow stuff in 2019, I think I found out about Replit, and it was just like a collaborative IDE. They weren't, they definitely weren't doing this agentic stuff. And just in the last few months, it's just gotten really good. It's wild.
It's so good. Like, I think so it was just a collaborative IDE before it, like when they introduced the Vibe stuff like this year or something.
Yeah,
because that's when I've heard about it.
About 5 months ago, they started releasing like some basic agentic stuff, and I tinkered with it, and I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. I can see it's trying. And then a couple months later, I tried it again, and I was like, oh, this is like good. And it's just gotten like really good since then. It's not perfect. You're not going to build, like the cutting edge, craziest new stuff with it. But for most of what like people are doing with no code tools and websites and simple web apps and CRUD apps and things like that, like, it's super powerful. I've built some really interesting things with it.
I do think it's in a league of its own though, because a lot of like Lovable, Bolt, even V0, they don't have their own, like they want you to use Supabase, and they want you to use Stripe, and they want you to use Clerk and all these separate tools. Whereas Replit, it has its own built-in, all of these tools are all built in. So from the initial prompt, it already knows what it's capable of, and will build those things in. Whereas all the other tools, I feel like they mock all that data. And I remember like a few months ago, I tried it at the beginning of the year, and it was great. And then all of a sudden, the designs looked incredible. like the actual design of it looked good. Again, going back to what you say though, there's still always going to be these prototyping tools. You're not going to get, crazy ass designs coming out of this stuff, but the design is nice, usable.
Well, the thing that I don't think most people think about when it comes to Replit is, since they've been around for so long, the product is very mature, and because it was not only a collaborative IDE, but they had this like one-click deployment. They have the back-end infrastructure. They have a lot of security things that like other folks aren't thinking about, and so the way they manage their secrets and environmental variables is very interesting. I see a lot of the other companies now trying to copy that. The integration with Neon, the backend databases, that basically it's a Postgres database, and the thing speaks SQL, and you can just talk natively. Like, again, I saw somebody just recently tweeting about Supabase, needing to be a little less technical. And it's like you said, having it all integrated, having the agent being able to talk to everything natively. There's other integrations you can bring in. There's a preview live in the pane, like between the agent and the assistant. It's just better than everything else out there. Like Bolt and Lovable, like they're great products, and I've seen some interesting things built with them. But as far as like usable, fully functional, like not just a pretty front end or not just a little web skin. Like if you want real functionality, Replit's the one for sure.
Are you earning any revenue from anything you built with Replit, or are you just still tinkering and figuring out?
We built a portal for our like local community. So I run a local tech meetup with a few friends, and we have had a lot of success with the meetup, and now we're selling memberships and doing all sorts of stuff. And so like the app itself is not generating revenue, but we are like running funds through a Replit site, and it's connected to the Luma API. So we manage all of our events with Luma, which is a great calendar app. And so we have the Luma API basically as our source of truth that handles all the membership stuff. And then we built with Replit a member portal that basically takes the Luma API as the base level, lets people kind of claim their profiles. So it has all their attendance records. And then now we can post and add the events. People can RSVP. Before, we just had a Webflow site. And so like as people drop their email in, that went to ConvertKit. And then from there, we had to like figure out how to sync that with Luma. And it was like, I don't know, we had two different sets of data. So like now we've kind of unified everything. It's just all the other admins of our group can now see the data in the back end. So it's not like some black box in ConvertKit or some other tool that they don't have access to. They can kind of see membership and revenue and everything. So it's been again, it's not like transformational, but it's super cool for us to have something like that that's custom. It's native to our needs specifically, and that's a big win, I think, just generally.
Yeah, without spoiling the surprise, I think there'll be discussion later on, which it's happening internally in my head. The ability to build your own apps rather than going with off-the-shelf solutions is going to be huge in the next few years, and to a scary degree that, anyway, I won't ruin the surprise. But yeah, that's great to see that you've identified something you need, you can build it with, and it's obviously holding its own with Replit. So
that's most of what I'm using it for, is just like little internal tools or little things that I've wanted to do, or things that I want to experiment with that like would be crazy to hire a developer for, or super expensive or whatever. And now I can just tinker with it, and it doesn't have to be production grade. It's just like, instead of going to Make or Zapier or something for a little automation, I'm like, maybe this thing will do it, and it's exactly what I want, rather than some cobbled together solution.
Yeah, it's cool. Right, well, we'll go to a quick break with our friends over at Flowbase, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Support for this episode comes from Flowbase. If you are building in Webflow, Framer, or Figma, Flowbase can help you build much faster. With over 4,000 components to choose from, you have a huge variety of wireframes and super clean, nicely designed sections that you can put together by just simply copy-pasting them to your project.
Over 15,000 icons as well, over 1,000 illustrations.
They also have a super helpful Webflow app called Boosters. With Boosters, you can add things like sliders and marquees and count-ups to your project with a few clicks and without any coding. So yeah, big thanks to Flowbase for supporting the show. If you want to try them out, go head to flowbase.co.
And just for you guys, I want to share a discount, Command Flowbase, all capitals for 20% off any plan. This is a limited offer, so get in there early.
All right, that's it. Let's continue with the show.
There you go. Cheers.
Damn, y'all are legit.
Legit, yeah. I've boosted the audio because it was coming through a bit quiet, so I might have to turn that down a little bit. But yeah, from one end of the spectrum to the complete other is the Gemini CLI, which actually went through a little bit of drama in of itself. Like, I think they accidentally launched it far sooner than they planned to, as you can see from this tweet here. But within a few hours, they actually launched the actual version of this. Have you seen this, Raymmar? Have you had are you in the CLI world?
A little bit. I don't know. Like, I think, there's all levels of folks that need tools, and lots of developers only live in like the command line, So very technical folks who are just kind of like speaking real code, they kind of want to be in the guts of these things. So I think that's who these are for. I think, a lot of times, like, I don't know why stick to that UI other than to meet those developers exactly where they are. So that's what I got to imagine they're going after.
Yeah, I would combine this, and I keep on mentioning Warp is just the tool of that I'm loving at the moment. But this it's a convenience thing, and this keeps on popping up through our through every episode of like, it's just nice to stay in one place and not have to move around. Like Dia, the browser, could be a place that you do that, and that's where you've been finding a lot of success, Kabaza. But I know what you mean. I think there's a snobbery that comes with it, because I was using Claude and I just felt like I don't know, I was like plugged into the Matrix or something. But
there's a snobbery that comes with developers. Like, developers are some of the most arrogant people I've ever met in my life. They just, we're smarter than you. We can do all the things. We're never wrong. Like, obviously, and so, and there's a whole stigma in the developer community of like, they kind of have to suffer for it to be, like proper. Like, you're not a real developer unless you're like doing it all from scratch, and so it's like, I don't know, get fucked, honestly. I feel like the people who were making horseshoes for a long time probably thought the same thing. Like, you can only heat the fire with this billows, and if you're not sweating, then the fire's not hot enough. And the dude just drove by in the in the new whip and the Henry Ford, talking about, all right, y'all keep making the horseshoes, like whatever.
Yeah. I think that again, I think that will become way more true than ever as we build more apps. And tools just get easier and easier to use them. But I think the interesting thing with this is the offering that they're basically giving away. I think I watched Theo's video, like he did the maths on this, where they're just giving away hundreds and hundreds of dollars of free usage, because you've got 60 model requests per minute. Jesus Christ, who's doing that?
Google, they can't let they gave you Gmail and they gave you the Google Docs, and like, they can't miss this. They just got to give away the house. They know how that game is played. Like, all they want is you using this so they can suck up all your code, and they can learn how you solve problems, and then they can be the god of AI again. Like, that's all they care about. They don't care about making money with this. They don't need to make money on anything related to this. They got so much cash coming in, so they just want to corner. They just want to corner the market, and they have a massive developer audience, and they know those folks like live in the command line. So they're like, hey, forget about all these other tools. Like, just come play in the command line, and we got it for you. So
they have released it's somewhere around here. Here we go. Here it is. So you can bring it into Cursor and whatever, but it's not much of a stepping stone away from the command line. But it just, this raises all sorts of questions about, like, how much data. Well, they're obviously stealing data and things like that. But we've spoken recently, haven't we, Kabaza, about why we hate Facebook and we don't hate Google. And what was it you said? Something.
Who doesn't hate Google?
Well,
I said, we hate Google less than we hate Facebook.
Yeah.
The reason being is Facebook is not giving back to the humanity anything useful. They're just giving,
Well, they're trying with Facebook. Llama now. Mark had his like moment, and he's like trying to be the cool kid now. So he's trying to change that perception, but
I don't think he's finding like a lot of luck with this. But the idea was that we don't hate Google as much because they are giving back. For example, with YouTube and a bunch of other free stuff they have, they're at least doing something useful, more useful than, Facebook and Instagram.
I think the reason people hate Facebook is because it was a bait and switch. Google, we always kind of knew like, oh, okay, Gmail, they got your Gmails, and YouTube had value proposition because like it was always a creator's kind of hub. But Facebook made this proposition of build your audience with us. We'll help you reach your audience. And, like that's a social network that you have. And then they flipped the whole script on that and they turned your audience. They started holding your audience hostage. And then we found out that they were doing all these psychological and emotional experiments with advertising. And it just became like, kind of like, ooh, what are you doing over there, right? And it was the first time you'd seen that type of thing. And I don't think Google, as much as like, as whatever you can think about, they got all the data and the privacy, like you go to Google and you search for something and they give you an ad and you kind of know that's the exchange. We didn't expect that was going to be the value exchange on Facebook, is that they were basically going to spy on us, our social lives, and then exploit that for advertising revenue. And I think that's got more to do with why people, hate Facebook versus Google at scale, I think.
I agree. And that's what I mean by, giving you Facebook. They don't give you anything like really that valuable. And even the connections that they give you, the connections that you make with your friends, they are exploiting that by, knowing everything about you and selling the data. On Google's end, at least, for example, on YouTube, they are sharing the revenue with the creators. On Facebook, Facebook and Instagram, you make videos, you make content, and they don't even share anything with you. So they are taking and taking and taking, where Google is giving something back, even in terms of like search. As you said, they show you ads, but also they show you search results.
Yeah. I think we've spent too much time defending Google. To be honest already. Like they're all terrible. They're all terrible.
Yeah. I was thinking like I built a website in Replit, of course, called I Really Fucking Hate AI. And the responses I get, because basically I'm trying to learn why people hate AI, because I'm just fully in on it, but I do want to see the other side. A lot of people basically use exactly what you've just said about what Facebook did. Like no one expected social media, simple little social media where you connect with your friends and share stupid little videos and pictures, how that just turned around into this huge data mining, what would you even call it? Just a horrendous like thing. We haven't seen it yet, but I think people are primed to like, well, what are they doing with all this AI data? OpenAI's go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, Facebook was the first real use case for AI. That algorithm was all AI, right? That was before GPT, before any of this stuff. Like all these social algorithms were using AI to kind of create this social feed that, is just catered for you. And now Google's using that type of stuff to fix search results. Like there's all sorts of quantitative data now that Google is like shifting search results specifically based on like political ideologies. Especially in the COVID era, they were exposed for a lot of that stuff. And so, yeah, I think, we think like we're just starting to see AI break through the surface kind of as mainstream for consumer products. But a lot of this machine learning and algorithmic stuff has been, behind the scenes for a lot of these companies for a while. And yeah, it's for sure advancing at a scale that, I don't think any of us really comprehend right now. But
no.
Yeah.
I mean, like even I literally just before we went live, I think Sam Altman's come out saying a bunch of stuff with regards to, well, I mean, they've been saying it for ages, how AI is going to be taking jobs. It's going to be, something we need to be conscious of. And I actually don't think they themselves know how much it's going to affect their own their own businesses and stuff, because we're slowly removing ourselves from the equation, which brings us on to the next topic, which I don't know whether I'm making a mountain out of a molehill with this one, but it definitely starts solidifying some things to me. So and this isn't new. So Google Studio has this. It's this idea of that they have a canvas, whereas Anthropic released this idea of artifacts. And it is, maybe I can even share the app itself because I have it here. it's this idea that it's applications on just-in-time application creation. Okay, so if I present I'll do window. Just-in-time application creation, where these are some examples they've got here. You can just build an application to give you flashcards. You build an application to, where was the one I saw, the PRD maker or something like that. I do think I can totally see a world here. And this is all they've launched, right? This is the news, right? We can move on to the next subject right now. But this, realistically, this is me looking into the future and saying, I don't think people will just be building their own tools. It's what we spoke about when, you're using Replit and you're building and building your own tools and things like that. I think you as a technical person, this is where we're at right now. But I don't think it will be long until your accountant is coming in and just building a quick little app in just-in-time sort of delivery to give them a bunch of data that they want and to be able to manipulate it. Maybe it's a pie chart that does this and they want to be able to cross-reference that data or something like that. So whilst on the surface, this looks like a fun little way to make apps, we're slowly getting to a point, I feel like, where the software development is not necessary anymore, because the everyday person is building their own pieces of software as they need it, and then it's discarded. I think even the article even uses a word to describe that, but they just discard it after they're done with it because they don't need the app anymore. So I think this brings into the equation of just a crazy future where I haven't got a job. No one's going to need me because
I don't think
building their own apps.
I don't think that's true at all. I think what's going to happen is more and more people are going to become technically capable and know how to deal with these things, at least in the short term. What you're saying might be true 20 years out, right? Like this job doomerism, this all these white collar jobs or all these things, maybe, at some point down the road. But I think right now what we're seeing is more and more people are actually being exposed to the role of software developer and taking their problem solving skills or real world skills and saying, now I have the capabilities of solving these problems with software without spending $100,000. Hiring some team and trying to go through this process and build a thing that's has to be viable for millions and millions of users for it to be profitable. No, I could build something in a weekend that's just useful for 10 people. Okay, cool. And so I think think about how many people when cameras just started being on your phone, became videographers, right? We got more media than less, the diversity of media escalated. And now you can see Hollywood struggling to keep up, but you're seeing independent creators and all these little, pocket creators. Just sometimes I go on YouTube and I see some video and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And then I'm like, holy shit, 40 million views. What? What world am I missing out on? And then you go to the channel and every one of their videos has that level of viewership and you're like, holy shit. Right. And so there's all these little pockets of things that are just going to flourish and be created that will counterbalance the displacement of jobs and the doomerism. And there's so many things that are going to shake out. I'm a very optimistic person in some of this. I do think disruption is coming, but I don't think I'm not one of those pessimistic, it's going to ruin all the jobs and everyone's going to be I don't know, destitute or something like that. I just don't think that the world doesn't work if that's true.
We'll have bigger problems.
Yeah, we'll just be chaos. And, if most people get their sense of purpose from doing some kind of productive thing in life, right? And the damn shame of it is that most people end up in the current world having to do some shit they don't want to do just to live. So imagine, could we get to a place where more people can just do things they're interested in or chase their passions because they don't have to worry about fucking filling in spreadsheets or doing TPS reports, So I don't know. That's what I think. And maybe that's an ideological view, maybe that's not a realistic view. But if you take people's ability to earn or to have purpose through work or and you just say, well, you don't need to do those things and we're just going to give everybody UBI and blah, 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 you're going to end up with chaos across all of society, and you already have people that feel they're not plugged into the economic system. And if you do that more and you like remove the ability for people to kind of improve their status in life by working hard or being innovative or being entrepreneurial, like you're just going to create more chaos than you could ever imagine.
Yeah, I suppose I've lost sight of my original, like my optimism. You've just reminded me like that optimism that I brought to these discussions, which is often like, well, it's just a leg up. It's just another leg up that we have. Then we're always going to try and it's just given us that extra little lift to then think more broadly or bigger, or we shape it in a way and allow us to do things that we didn't do before. Going right back to the car analogy, the horse car analogy, or the farming analogy and all that kind of stuff. So you're right, it will be interesting. And I guess I need to be more excited about what that could do for me in my future as a software engineer and all that.
And I'm not saying industries won't be disrupted or lots of people won't have to like change skills or find new things, or or that there won't just be total, like if you think about the .com boom and bust cycle, everyone knew the internet was going to be like a tremendous asset to the world in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And then there was this whole like economic cycle of like, it's all got to shake out, right? So everyone's betting and making all these crazy bets on these tech companies and all these .com companies and like, this one and that one and like big, like just crazy returns, kind of like we're seeing with some of these AI valuations. And then all of a sudden, swoop, the bottom fell out. And sure, the internet still became the internet. And here we are 20 years later, with all these cool tools having this conversation. But there was a big shakeout between then and now. And we haven't had that shakeout in the AI world. And it's for sure coming, right? Like whether it's caused by technology or whether it's caused by some geopolitical thing or whether it's caused by some larger economic implications that like, like there's all sorts of geopolitical stuff happening that could cause ripples in all these industries. So I think there will be some kind of major shakeout between here and there that is going to be more important. I was just listening to a Peter Thiel and interview with somebody else, and they were saying that maybe intelligence isn't our problem. Like is more intelligence really the problem, or are there other social systems at play? Are there other economic systems at play? Are there other things that are like stopping us from, succeeding? Because if you think about it, it's not always the smartest person in the room that is the most successful. Right. A lot of times smart people complicate things and they get in their own way because they think too much about stuff. And then it's some, I don't want to say dumb, but it's like some naive person that's like, just do it, and then they do it and they're like, oh, hey, look at that. Right. And so it's not always intelligence. That's the answer. Right. It's not always like throwing more intelligence at it. So it's like, maybe that's not the problem at scale. Like AI is intelligence, but like, does that really mean at scale that's going to solve all the problems? So I think socially and from a community standpoint and like, we've got a lot of other things to figure out as a society, as modern people living in this world. That sure, AI is going to complicate, but it's not the only problem here. It's not the only variable in the mix.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like, because I said last week, I think it was like I don't value intelligence in that maybe intelligence will just not be something we care too much about because it's being commoditized by AI. And I guess my interpretation of what you're saying is then that will, once intelligence is out the way, once that thinking, that maybe that will give life or give room to think about quote unquote real issues or something like this, whether it be social, whether it be economical or something like that. So
yeah, I did a talk a couple years ago in Buenos Aires actually, and I've been thinking about it recently because I don't think it's like on the web anywhere, but I should probably resurrect it. And the idea of the talk was when technology fades. And we have these moments going all the way back to like the beginning of humanity that like we have these transformational technologies. And by that, I'm talking about like the advent of fire or agriculture or, like electricity, right? I'm not talking about like a little widget. I'm talking about like these fundamental changes in like society. Electricity is probably the most recent current one that I can think about. The internet is probably in the same realm, but like, when Edison, when we first had electricity, when Edison and Tesla are like trying to figure out like how are we going to power homes and what's going to be the light bulb and is it AC versus DC, and like we're just thinking about this stuff. Like for a long time, you could see like, oh shit, that's cool. Did you see the light bulb? And then they had these world fairs and everybody's looking at like, oh my god, the light and the city is electrified. But it was decades before, like every house, you just walked in and you flipped a switch and you're like, oh, hey, electricity, look. And now we take it for granted. You walk into every building in the modern world and you just expect to be able to plug things in and have electricity. You don't even think about this magnificent thing that is like, and the power grid is a big deal, right? Like all these things are a big deal. And so it's a long time between the advent of the technology and when it fades, right? Same thing with fire. And like, you know, for a long time, harnessing fire was a big deal, but now like you just go and heat something up in the microwave or on the oven or on the stove, or you can strike a match and you have fire, right? Like we just take it for granted now. And so we're in the like, holy shit phase of AI, you know, but in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 or whatever it becomes, when it just disappears. And like you said, Samuel, earlier, you don't need a device. It's just everywhere. It's just there, like electricity. What happens then? We still have social issues. We still have to figure out how to like live in a community. We still have to figure out how to like generate food and keep the infrastructure and like make sure that we're not fighting in the streets and that people have like purpose in their lives. And so like AI and technology is not going to solve those things. Like they're tools inside of this world that we live in, but like there's bigger problems fundamentally at a social layer that need to be solved, that like these things can either amplify or tear down. And I think that's like the conversation that very few people are having around this space. Is like, what happens when this technology fades and it's just ubiquitous and we're still here having to figure out how to live with each other? And, you know, we don't have a shared message, right? There's no shared story that's bigger than us. That, you know, the community in my mind matters more, and story matters, and like how we interact with each other, like that all matters more than the tooling. But the tooling is how we do those things, right? So like,
the IRL thing, the community aspect is huge, because I think we are becoming more insular and less social as a community. Like I was just even thinking about it today. Like I'm so focused on work right now, I'm almost losing the ability to speak to people and actually have conversations with people, because the internet is a weird place. Like people talk, like no one talks like they do as they write in an email. Like, I don't know why we've developed this language, this way of talking in emails, but that's how it is. It's not real. And the internet is the same sort of thing. We use words, we use phrases, we reference things that we wouldn't necessarily do in real life, because we're dealing with, human emotion and stuff like that. So we are, and I'm sure there's some documentaries out there about becoming lonelier as humanity. And with AI, I have no need to ask anybody anything, even from an emotional support standpoint at the moment, you know.
Well, the problem is the AI can't hug you, and when your car breaks down, the AI can't come tow you, you know. And like when you're lonely, the AI can't come watch a movie with you and sit next to the couch on you, and like, you know. So like again, I think what we're gonna see, we had a little local AI meetup last night, and we were talking about trends, and people were talking about all these different trends. And I said, well, here's a trend that I don't think anybody's talking about. And that's the trend towards small, intimate, real world connections again, right? If you think about like the first layer of the internet and these networks that we've built, it's been about build the biggest network you can, you know, like go as viral as you can, generate as much attention as you can, which is super great. But when AI starts getting better at that, and like now these big channels are just full of like slop, well, what are you going to want? You're going to want to know that like the people I'm talking to in this network are human, right? Like what sense would this conversation make if I'm talking to two bots and it's just me like talking to myself in a room? There's no value there, right? At least from a human emotional connection value. And so like there's going to be a trend of people moving towards smaller groups, private systems, networks where like it's real people. Like I know there's no bots in here because it's only 20 people and I know all 20 of those people, you know? And so that doesn't mean that they can't create stuff or bring stuff from the outside, but there's going to be these new groups that start acting as filters across all of this. And that's going to be very important. And I think those will be very in high demand from a value standpoint. There's going to be lots of business in building those types of networks, and also licensing the intellectual output of those networks out for AIs or for people to then access and know like, hey, those are going to be the new basically like centers of trust online, like what media used to be. Right? What journalism used to be. It's like these groups, it's like, hey, these 50 people are like the leaders in this one industry. Here's what they're coming to consensus on in real time and that they think is interesting. And that might be a feed that people will trust, because I know those folks, like the value of that network is not advertising or being hyperbolic. It's in like using the tools in the most effective way possible, right? And so I think those types of groups, and they look like right now, those types of groups looks like industry associations. They look like business associations. They look like chambers of commerce. They look like networking groups. And so these types of things exist in the real world, but they don't really exist in the digital world. And the incentives in those groups is to create value inside of a group, but keep the value inside that network. Whereas the value of social media is to build value on the network and then let the network kind of abstract that and let it flow out at scale. And so I think we're going to see a reversal of that, where people are going to want to capture the value of those networks and the relationship that they have. And it's very difficult to do that with the incentive structures that, operate on X or TikTok or YouTube or any of those things.
You're doing quite well, Kabaza, on you've spoken to me before about what's that little game thing where you walk around and you just walk into rooms with people. It's a networking. Gather Town, that's the one.
Yeah.
Aren't you using like a combination of these things? I mean, to try and stay community driven and all the rest of it?
Well, for online stuff, I think Gather Town, they had a very great idea, but I think they never took off. I think the closest to Gather Town is Discord. Visually, it's not the same, but function-wise, it's very similar. So the way I see it, you have your Discord, that is your entire world in that sense. And then you have different Discord servers. These are neighborhoods, quite literally. And in each neighborhood, there are different channels and like with different categories. So each neighborhood has houses. And in each house, so in each channel category, you have different rooms. And they are called rooms, like they are voice rooms. And you just join them. It's like you go to a neighborhood, you go to a house that you want, and then you join people in a certain room talking about a certain thing. And that's how we actually use Discord. Like I can check my Discord and I can see where are my friends, and they are not in the same server. They are all across different servers. And I know that server, if they are there, they are with that group of people and they do some gaming, and I know even the vibe of that server. And then if they are on my server, they talk about something else. And even for work, we have that for work. We have this open space thing where we have basically a category for work, and people can go there, co-work, or we have like channels for like kind of like cave-like. So you go there, you mute yourself, you just sit there and work. It basically signals that, hey, imagine like a real world, like a real house, somebody in a room sitting with headphones on, maybe even with a sticker on their back saying like, do not fucking disturb me. It's just I'm sitting and working, but you see them there working. And if you need to tap on their shoulders, you can do this. And in Discord, it's just literally joining the room and maybe shooting them a message. And if they don't answer you, that means they are too busy to answer you. Because if they go AFK, meaning that they no longer actively like sit at their computer, they are going to be moved to a separate room that is AFK, away from keyboard. That's like very, very clear who is actively sitting, who is like not there. So I really like that idea. I live in that world. It's like my day-to-day life, actually. From the time that I wake up to the time I sleep, I check my Discord regularly, and I spend at least, I don't know, probably 10 hours a day in one of these neighborhoods, in one of these rooms, sitting with people. Like we have a place to, I know if I go there, we will talk philosophy. I know that it's like, there is not a written rule, but it's kind of like the vibe of that place. And and the people who are there, and the people who know that place and are not interested in philosophy, they obviously don't join, or like, they are not active. So these communities shape, and this all exists, it's kind of like enables us to connect, even though we cannot like in a physical world, because like, everybody's living in a different country. But yeah, it's quite fascinating, and I love it. I just wish that it had maybe a mode where you could have it like Gather Town. like Discord, but maybe with like a little bit more, walking to these neighborhoods, like a UI like that. But it's not necessary, because that fades out after like you use GatherTown. Like at the first like 1 hour or so, it's really fun. But after that, it becomes a bit annoying, because then you have to quite literally walk up to people. Then you notice, oh, I don't want to walk like 20 seconds to go to that person. You literally have to, right? And then people get lost in the rooms, because they have to physically, like in the world, they have to find on the map, they have to find other desks and go. So they have this option to teleport. So you find yourself actually using that functionality less like the normal typical like walking functionality, and you see yourself just teleporting, which becomes Discord in
Discord,
a way. So,
It's what's interesting to me is there's just two worlds forming. There's the world you just described, which is people are online and they're working and doing and lots of people do that. Remote workers, lots of people who, I think specifically in like niche industries, right? So it's like, if you're a web developer, specifically like in the Webflow world, like there's all these little communities that flourish for people to kind of connect, and freelancers. And I bet in like lots of different verticals, there's those types of things where you kind of have these like digital worlds that are super robust. But then you go out into like the physical world, and it's like those paradigms just don't exist, right? Like that's a coffee shop, or it's the yoga studio, or it's the, like those are the places where you have to like physically walk to the thing, and then like maybe you're surrounded by a group, and then there's a vibe, that space, this courtyard over here, or the park over here. So like, what's interesting to me is that like I interact with lots of people in the physical world that don't do the digital thing. It's like when I talk to them about some of this stuff, and when I talk to them about community or some of what you were saying, like, because I'm in Discord all the time too, like just by default, like my work is in there, like the people I interact with are, but they're also in like WhatsApp, and then on X. Like I spend way too much time on X, let's be real. And so all these little bubbles, but like it's so weird when I talk to my like real world friends. I have air quotes, you can't see, like real world friends. Like they don't get any of it. They're not in any of that. They don't spend any time in Discord or doing any of these things. It's like there's two worlds. There's the people that kind of see this new matrix being built, and they're kind of thriving in it. And then there's folks that don't even see this like parallel dimension, this like multiple, like the multiverse is being born right now. Like we're building it. All these little worlds that we're building, are real for the people who are in them. And there's nothing more exciting than to like find yourself at a conference, and then now you're in a big space with all these people that you've been interacting with in this like virtual space for a long time, that like now it's real. Like, hey, I met you in the real world, and now we ate to get, it's like there's these bridges between this digital space and the online space that like I don't know. And I think more and more things are going to move digital, right? You watch Ready Player One, you see that where things are headed. Like, I don't know. That's going to be an interesting thing, is to see how these two worlds merge, like how the real world and the digital world kind of come together.
You've seen the Vision OS update as well, probably. Previously, you could just use it as solo, but now they are adding some functionalities to use it with other people, and also the avatar is getting better and more realistic. I'm not saying that at some point people will prefer this to real world. And what I described with Discord, it's not like I prefer it to real world. Quite literally, actually, if I had the option to choose to have my people in a studio close to me in the city instead of Discord, I would 100% do it. Like no second thought. Like obviously, I would love to do that. Maybe some point in the future. Actually, I want to do that. That's one of my goals. Maybe in 5 years, to have my own studio with like a big team of people that I like working with physically there. But right now, that's not possible.
Sure.
And even with my friends around, people that I work with, they also would like to travel, and they go to different places. So even though some of them live in the same city as I live, they're not here all the time. Actually, they're like traveling a lot, because they want to see the world and work at the same time too. So Discord is for us bridging that gap. And it's not like the reason it's so radical to me, the reason it's so different from any other tool is that what I described, like these houses and rooms that don't need they are not separated, they are not disconnected, everything is just there. It looks like a physical space being there, and you can just join them without talking to people for like you invite people.
They're just
to
always
Zoom
on the
meetings.
rooms. Yeah, you just
It's
you show
there.
up and it's there.
And even like I have it open on another monitor, even on there is a list on Discord where you see where people are, like the people that you have in that group, are they online? And if they are online, where are they? And they have a status, so you could also see, oh, that person is playing games and that person is working.
Right.
And a lot of this is automatic. That's why I really like it. With a glance, I see where people. Yeah.
We're back.
Had a little glitch there.
Yeah.
Glitch there.
The glitch in the Matrix heard us talking about it, so we had to split into a. Now we're in two parallel universes.
Yeah, I got disconnected from the studio, so if it were real, this would not have happened. But
well, I mean, I'll move on to the next article because I think this all ties in together. Have you seen this recent study on, if it loads, add to stage?
Getting dumb? Is it
getting dumb?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Have you?
I don't need any help with that, y'all.
Nah.
Well, they said don't say that, right? I think
no, it's part of the rules.
It's part of the rules. Don't say you get dumb. It's just what is it?
Well,
so what do you?
They explored 3 groups of people, right? Brain only, LLM, and search engine, and asked them to write these essays, right? Whatever the essay was about, I'm not too sure. And then on the 4th session, they did the old the switcheroo and got the people who were brain only to do LLM, and then LLM only to do brain only kind of assessment of their write up, whatever it is they wrote. And basically they monitored their brains during the where is it now? They monitored their brains using the electrocephalography.
We're not seeing your screen, just a heads up.
I see the screen.
Oh, okay. No? Maybe it's just me.
StreamYard, come on, get it on. Where are you not seeing? Yeah. All right. Yeah. Cool. Because I was going to say, if you're looking at it on YouTube and you can't see it on YouTube, then that's different. EEG to like assess what's going on, basically. And the brain only obviously exhibit the strongest distributed networks amongst their brain and all this sort of stuff. Whereas basically the LLM people just switched off. And the self-reported ownership of like, basically, do I know what the hell that I wrote about? Again, as you can imagine, the LLM people weren't there. You know, they couldn't recall what they had learned. They couldn't really recall what they had written, things like that. Whereas obviously the brain only people, and I don't necessarily think this is rocket science. I think this is expected. I mean, this is the same story we talk about time and time again when it comes to, you know, if you write something down, it's going to have a different impact than if you just try and memorize it and all the rest of it. But it's just applied in the current context of LLMs.
That's good. Yeah, I think also the goal. I'm not sure if the goal is. I'm not connecting with this because what is the point of writing an essay? I know the point here is, you know, for the study, but in real life, you should have some interest in what you're doing and you're writing an essay about. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter like what your brain activity is. It quite literally, it doesn't matter. Like you're writing something that previously maybe you could just copy paste it from different sources. At the end, you would have a lower quality essay or something, you know, just pretty bad. But now with LLMs, it's average. So the output here, they are asking for something like there's an objective. And my problem with this study is that I feel like the objective doesn't really matter. At the end, what matters is what you are trying to do, and how you are going to do it doesn't really matter anymore, especially.
Yeah.
This is just the same. This is the calculator all over again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember in school, and they're like, you can't use the calculator because you're not going to have this, you're not going to be able to have it all the time. It's like, well, now I got it all the time. And I don't, and so did people forget their multiplication tables? Sure. Was it more important to memorize your multiplication tables a long time ago? Sure. Do I still need multiplication sometimes? Yeah. Okay. But I can also use the thing. And same thing with again, I think we're headed towards a world where you're just going to be able to do other shit. Maybe you need to write an essay, but maybe you don't need to write an essay. Maybe you could just read somebody else's essay, or you can have it aggregate something, and now your brain power is freed up to do other things. And so I just think it's one of those the skill set, the shifts. We were talking yesterday in the Flow Walkers space, and I brought up this old quote that just resonates with me, especially in this modern world. But it's we're ancient hardware running medieval software, living in a modern world, right? And so our bodies are still evolutionarily tuned for a totally different world than the one we live in right now. And our social structures, the cues that we take socially, are built hundreds and hundreds of years ago, right? Most of our social and cultural institutions and religion and social norms and how we interact with each other, all that's kind of based off of the past. And we haven't really figured out what is the new role for humanity in this space when we have abundant intelligence or abundant resources here or there, or all these other things. And so we're just going through this shift of humanity where we just don't really know. And anybody who pretends that they know is lying. I would be very cautious to listen to anything that person has to say, because they probably have an agenda of some level. So I think we're just in a phase where if you just ask the LLM to write a thing and you don't spend any time thinking about it, like you said, if you're not interested in the subject, the essay is going to be trash. This is going to be this. But again, if you're taking physical notes, when you're writing and you're ingesting and you're interested in something, the brain still works, and the brain's not going to stop retaining knowledge that the person thinks is interesting. And so we're just going to have to find different ways to learn and be engaged. And maybe less people are going to be writing essays in the future, right? You're just going to be talking to Jarvis and, hey, tell me about XYZ, and this thing in your ear is going to be telling you everything you need to know. You don't need an essay,
Yeah. It's the level of compute to me that the way I'm trying to understand and also communicate it. It's the level of compute that is changing. The reason we have this discussion is because a lot of these companies are telling us these AIs are a substitute for intelligence, but we're not sure about that. And actually, there are a lot of people hard disagreeing with that. What we can agree with is that these LLMs are just computers, just compute. They do compute just like a calculator. They do it instead of with numbers, they do it with words. And just the same way that there is no need for a lot of, mathematicians to sit around and, perform complex calculations, there will be less people needed to write some stuff. I don't know, a lot of writing and including code will be especially for simpler stuff. We won't need it. It's just like a calculator. But do we still need mathematicians? Yes. And do these things substitute for actual intelligence? So far, no, not really. As you said, Raymmar, they are not going out to solving real problems, and they don't even know what real problems are to begin with. That's what these agentic companies are trying to get into, but I think we are quite far from that.
I agree. I think we're orders of magnitude away from anything meaningful from an intelligence standpoint. That's why all these people that think oh, it's going to be AGI is it's no, whatever this thing we're using, it is a very impressive parlor trick. It is very impressive, autocomplete. It's a beautiful thing where it can take all this aggregate knowledge and kind of hone that and turn that into something useful for you. That's amazing. But there's nothing novel inside of there almost ever, right? And the things that are novel, for instance, if you look at the AlphaGo, when it beat the Go game beat the top players in the world, it had trained on millions and millions of games, and then it made like some novel move in that space that maybe a human didn't think about. And so in that context, there's a little bit of novel learning, and then you're seeing also the same thing with like manufacturing, where it's like a human might think about building a skeleton like this, where the AI is like, hey, we can remove 80% of that material and it'll still be stable, right? Like those are kind of novel insights. Those are things that like the AI is good at. And again, right now code, because code is very deterministic. But when it comes to like writing an essay, like it's just going to give you the average agglomeration of like whatever the most people have said so far about this topic, rather than like, and most things that are interesting to read are from people who have a way higher than average outlook on something or intelligence about a specific topic, and it's them kind of organize that information. It's going to be a long time before these systems can kind of connect those dots. Even with the agentic stuff, like most of the agentic stuff is just glorified like Integromat, make automations. Like most stuff that I see is like agents is really just like these complex automation flows, right? And so it's like the thing's not thinking. It's just running through a process with a little bit of, like you said, compute, like a little bit of intelligent compute inside of there, but it's not solving real problems yet. And I think it's a long way before that, like decades before that happens.
And not to forget, the reason we are saying all of this is because I feel like this is what I definitely see in the community, and I feel like a lot of people feel like this. They feel threatened by a lot of these claims from these companies that our jobs will be gone, and maybe it will happen, but it's
skills
not
issue.
Skill because of that.
Try harder. No, I'm kidding.
If you're below average, if you are below average in what you do, and you don't like what you do you really care?
Well, if you're below average, then like find a way to get above average. And not everybody can be above average, because then you wouldn't have a distribution. But I think the world is just like that. Like not everyone has the same outcome for effort or whatever. Like there's always going to be unequal distributions. The only thing we can make sure we do as this thing grows is that it doesn't skew the tables so far that, let's say, the first person that gets this thing, this is the real concern, right? Is that the first people that have this AGI, like they're never going to tell us. Like, oh, OpenAI would never come out and be like, oh, we've solved it. Like they're going to hack the entire stock market. They're going to extract billions and billions of dollars. And then we're going to know like, hey, who's doing this? Oh, they must have figured something out. Like that's 100% how we're going to figure out AGI. Like nobody's ever going to develop this thing, solve super intelligence, and then like come out the next day and be like, hey, look at what we can do. No, they're going to take and extract and build systems and build as much infrastructure as they can to make sure that they don't ever get unseated. And that's the concern, is that like then you basically close the door for anyone to be able to compete. And so like that's the real concern, is that and it doesn't matter if that happens 5 years from now or 20 years from now or 100 years from now. Like if that happens, the whole game has changed.
I agree. And for people who might not connect with what you said, like an analogy for that would be, if you find a true gold mine, like an actual gold mine, would you sit there and sell shovels, or just take the gold mine? Like if it's an actual, like not imaginary, you don't go around and tell people, hey, I found this gold mine here, come buy my shovel. To you just take it. And the same is true with AGI. I feel like we are really far from that. Something that can to be called like actual, like true AGI. And once we get there, if we get there, probably some governments will use it to hack to, I don't know.
When has Sam said it's already here? I thought he was like, he had suspicions. Obviously he's just saying shit.
They're just
if it was already here, they wouldn't be worried about dealing with Microsoft. They would just have the AI handle that. No,
if you have AGI, you can literally build any piece of software on demand. That's the definition of AGI for me. The definition of AGI is that it can be so smart that it can self-replicate. AGI is an AI that is smarter than all of us humans combined, and it can self-replicate. It can do anything essentially that has been the definition of AGI. And what I really dislike about what Sam Altman is doing, I'm quite disappointed in like what all these AI companies are doing, is they are reducing that, or like bringing down that definition that we had for AGI for decades. We always refer to it as to AGI as, you know, the moment after the event horizon, past the event horizon, which we cannot see, which we cannot tell. So the event horizon is the moment where you cannot predict, you know, after
you
don't
singularity,
know.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they keep moving it. Well, they're going to keep moving the needle because they're just not going to be
They're
hidden.
just bringing it down. They're like,
so they're calling
this is AGI. No,
they're
AGI.
calling it super intelligence now. That's what you hear everyone saying. No, people are not saying AGI anymore. They're saying we've reached super intelligence, right? Which allows them to make claims like that without actually having to answer the questions that you're talking about, which is, you know, where's God? Like, you know, if God exists, show him to me. And no conquerors have ever, going back to your like gold mine thing, like have ever stumbled across a land and found diamonds and gold and wealth and then been like, all right, I guess like we should just open this up like Disneyland and let everyone in here. You know, it's like, no, you build fortresses around it. You build walls, you know, like you build a strong military defense around, you know, like to protect this thing. And then you exploit it as far as you can, regardless of the cost of human life. And then you build a nation around that. Like that's how it's always played out. And I don't think in the digital world it's going to play out any different.
Scary stuff.
Well, this is why open source matters. This is why, you know, like having this thing be, that's the other, like you go back to OpenAI and this idea of it being like a nonprofit and now it's, you know, a for-profit, or they're trying to make it a for-profit entity. And, you know, like there's really big, and that's go back to the games, the incentives, the social structure underneath this thing is more important than the thing itself, right? It's like putting a gun in the right hands. You know, you could protect the neighborhood or everyone could be dead, you know? And like, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a society building a gun that has capabilities to do things that we don't understand. It's a weapon we don't understand yet. And imagine you find some tribe that hasn't had any kind of modern civilization and you just give them these types of weapons, they wouldn't know what to do with it. Right. And so we don't know what to do with these things, and we don't know, like, is it going to be for good or is it going to be for bad? And I think that's like going back to, I don't want to get super philosophical, but like if you think about we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, this is like the founding of the United States, basically was saying like we have to take individual responsibility if we want to have a free nation. And on the internet, you know, we don't have that kind of compass. Everything, we're still living in like a digital feudal state where we don't own anything, so we can't really contribute. And so we, the creators, in order to have a more perfect internet, have to like find ways to make sure that these incentives align with us, not just be, you know, organized to the winner take all. Like winner take all can't be the solution here. But I don't know how you stop that. Like I don't actually know how you interfere with those things.
I had a segue onto open source then, and then you brought the philosophical conversation into it. Should we? Do you want to say something, Kabaza, or should we move on?
Yeah, ready.
Yeah, for time's sake, let's. So anyway, going back
it's
to the
fun. Like I could talk about this forever. Like it goes into morals, it goes to philosophy. I talk to my friends about this a lot, and I'm quite passionate about it. It's interesting. Things that we don't know, we are quite literally figuring it out. Everybody has their own opinion, and we are finding things out as we are moving forward. So interesting. But as you said, for the sake of the show, we can't.
Maybe we'll come back to it. But from a open source perspective, the drama that was Opencode back in the CLI world. I know this isn't going to be too insightful like the last two conversations, but basically the drama that revolves around this CLI, and I want to use this. I haven't had a chance to use it. I've just downloaded it today because it does seem like it's doing a whole bunch of stuff. From a cost perspective, is actually doing a lot of cost saving things. But basically, the story goes, the original creator of what was called Term AI, what was his name? Hussein created this nice terminal-based coding interface, brought on a guy called Dax, who is on, if I got Dax over here, brought on Dax to work on the UI, and also Adam brought on the UI, and there was a bit of, and Charm AI came in to basically poach the app because it was working so well. I would like some nice early shots of this application, but I don't actually have any. And Dax and Adam declined politely, but Hajim actually said yes to it, but sneakily kind of went behind their back, took the code base with them, even though Dax owned the name Opencode, and has basically they've got a hold of the original code base, wiped Dax and Adam's contributions to this code base as if they never existed. And you can see he's saying this here, deleted GitHub comments and whatever. And a Charm AI, or I don't even know what they're called, to be honest. Let's have a look. What's his name? Oh, just Charm, claiming that none of this is true. He's saying no comment history was deleted, re-registered, blah blah blah. So this is open source drama that's happening at the moment, and this is the CEO who's basically just denying everything. And I think we've literally spoken about some sort of he said she said drama every single week on this show, whether it's the illusion of thinking with the Apple thing saying that what do you call it, the models don't think. It's just so much drama going on in the world of AI at the moment, and I'm struggling to keep up.
Winner
That's
takes
a
all,
short
baby.
version. I know. And then we were talking about Zuckerberg as well, just offering this $100 million signing bonus or something.
I heard some pretty interesting, like just maybe that's BS, that it was like just trying to seed.
I've heard
this. Like imagine if imagine if you try to swap and then you don't get the 100 million, and then you're like, oh fuck, like that was a lie, and so you stay, or like you feel like you're being underpaid, like maybe you're underperforming or something. So it's like a lot of like maybe psychological warfare also being had in the game of at that scale.
I mean, 4 employees have left OpenAI for Zuck's dream team.
Sure. Here's why I think. Going back to the conquerors never going to give it up, and this all-out arms race that we're seeing, what I think hasn't been mentioned, and I don't know if lots of people are thinking about, is like blockchain and decentralized ownership of these networks. And you see, are y'all familiar with Balaji? I think that's the guy's name, is Balaji. He's like
should I get this up behind the scenes?
He's big on the like this idea of a network state. And lots of people in the crypto world have this idea of like these big digital networks that will somehow shape the future, just like kind of nations do now, right? Like some physical nation, like we have the United States or the United Kingdom, or like Brazil. Like you have chunks of land that are nation states. And he postulates that we'll have digital nation states, these network states.
Network state.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
The network state, right? And so he talks a lot about this, and I think this is where I think it gets really interesting, because the whole internet as we know it right now runs off of a bunch of open source protocols: TCP/IP, HTTPS, like all these things that like email, everything. It's like these decentralized open source technologies. And so there's all sorts of people figuring out how do you distribute the incentives inside of these systems and build, new sovereign digital nations and like all sorts of stuff that, decentralizes and distributes the earning potential or the incentives around these systems, so that, it's not just a Google only type thing or an Apple only type thing or a Facebook only, like whoever it is that wins X or Tesla or whoever's, like the players are. But then it comes down to, again, like connections and trust, and how do you defend a digital network state, right? Like if it's just servers, how do you defend it? If one of the countries that your servers are in says, hey, these don't exist anymore, they're ours, and so now the network in that state just dies. And so maybe the rest of the network lives, but now everybody that thought they had sovereignty in that nation is no longer accessible. So there's a lot of questions to be figured out about, like, does this stuff get opened up? Will we all be able to benefit from it? Does it become kind of like the internet now, where, you know, you can stand up your own server, connect to the internet, and like you're building the internet, and you don't need instructions. If you can send out an HTTP request and the server responds, like, we can talk, you know? And so like this next layer of money, of intelligence, kind of has to follow that, or else, you know, like if you think about what made the West great, it was, again, the right to digital or the right to property ownership. And in the online world, we don't live by those same rules, you know? And so we have to figure out at some level how to give people ownership of these systems, of this infrastructure, of the things that we're building, in order for like the incentives to be evenly distributed. Otherwise, that's just like, we're just going to be living like digital slaves inside of whoever, you know, winner take all this system.
So so I was just reading here. So he's written a book, basically. Fill us in a little bit. So he's proposing, or he's trying to make sense of it, or he's just trying. What is he actually?
I think they moved to Singapore, and they're actually like building what they call a network state. Like, I don't know what the infrastructure is for that, but they're actually like trying to build a digital sovereign nation that is just kind of connected through a network. And I think it's, you know, like a Bitcoin network. It's some kind of decentralized network. But again, I just like, as interesting as it is, and as much as I believe in the idea, we're going to go philosophical again. In order to have a stable society, right? Like at the scale that we have, the only way we got here was to basically give the government a monopoly on violence, right? And what I mean by that is, like, it's no longer the responsibility of the neighborhood to defend the neighborhood. The police are there for that. And it's no longer the responsibility of the state to defend the nation. It's the military for that, right? And so and then inside of that system, we have laws that say, hey, if you follow these laws, then you don't have to worry about the violence. The violence is only for the people that break the laws, or to make sure that we're safe inside of these borders, right? And so and if you go all the way back to like ancient tribes, like you kind of had to figure out your violence for yourself, right? If the neighboring tribe was bigger than me, they could come take my shit. And so in a digital state, if you can't own the property, or if you can't own or defend the land, then how do you build a sovereign nation? Because again, the government could just say, you no longer exist. Like we're taking this. This is ours now. And we see governments do that all the time. If they want to build a development and your house is in the way, they can like eminent domain your house, and now they're going to build the highway right through the middle of the thing, or whatever, right? Like, and so why wouldn't that apply in the digital world? And so again, going back to like, there's all these fundamental tenets that make sense in the physical world that we've known for hundreds or thousands of years, that are like fundamental to free society. The freedom of speech, freedom of privacy, freedom of property ownership, freedom to like, you know, like not have your neighbor kill you. That's not really a freedom, but it's kind of like a right that we said, hey, let's all get together and make sure our neighbors don't kill each other. Let's put some people in charge of like defending against that type of shit. And that's how you build society at scale. In the digital world, we don't have any of those rules. We're not following any of those like norms that we've discovered in the physical world are requirements for free and prosperous people. And so for a long time in the physical world, we lived in a feudal system where like the peasants owned shit, and the king and the royalty, they owned all the land, and maybe you could farm some of it and eat enough just to live. But everything else came up the chain. And right now, the digital world is exactly like that. We live in a digital feudal system where everything we do, we farm the lands, we're on social media, we're content creators, we're influencers, whatever. But all the winnings go up to the king, to the Google, to the Mark Zuckerbergs, to the Facebooks of the world. You know, and until we fundamentally shift those incentive structures and we have a Western style American revolution, but for the internet, where the creators say, hey, we're going to own these networks, we're going to take back these rights. And until that happens at scale, nothing's going to change. And like, there's no way to have any sovereignty outside of a government system or outside of like any of these other systems. So that's probably not interesting to you all, but that Balaji thing, like, it's cool to see some things tinkering, but again, they don't solve that fundamental problem, which is the social problem. It's the civic problem. It's the connection, the community problem.
Yeah. And it's weird. Like, why we put so much onus on, like, why do you think it's important that we create this network state? I mean, is it because you inevitably see that this is where all roads point to, that we're all going to be just chronically online, which we already are? Or like,
well, I think their goal is to usurp some of the regulatory burdens and overburden some like government structures that are being built, right? So people basically want to extract themselves from the laws of a specific nation or whatever, and say, hey, we're going to be sovereign over here, which means we have a different way of transacting business, and we have a different way of like maybe resolving conflicts. Maybe we're using a lot more smart contracts to like solve problems, so we don't really need the judicial system as much. You know, like there's all sorts of things that you could like see, hey, there's a lot of value in having some kind of sovereignty in how you solve problems or communicate or do whatever. And so, and it just becomes, it becomes a story, really. And if you think of like, what is a country? A country is a story, right? We have these things called invisible technologies that surround us. And very few of us think of it. Think of like a weekend. What's a weekend? It's a fucking story. You know, what is money? Money is a story. Like money has no, like the paper that is money has no tangible value in your pocket other than you believe it has money, and somebody who's taking it from you will have, like, it's a story, right? And so we have all these kind of stories that nobody thinks about as technologies. And the ability to unify like people to action for a story. Like, why would I, again, go to violence? Why would I defend your tribe with my life? I would never do that unless we had some story, religion, that made us brothers and family at a bigger scale than just our, you know, mom and dad. And so like you need a bigger story for me to say, I'm going to give my life to defend you and your family. And so in a nation, like in a digital world, if you're going to change perspectives, if you're going to do things, like you need a bigger story, you know? And I think everyone's racing to be the person that can tell that story. That's why everyone's racing for social media or for attention or for advertising revenue or whatever. Like everyone just wants to be the place where people go to get information because they can control the story. And if you can control the story, then you can drive people to action. And if you can drive people to action, you can probably drive people to violence. You can drive people to like do things, whatever you want, you know? And so like, and you need to protect that. You need to protect those systems for that. And again, that's why I think community is important and how we connect is important. And the idea behind a digital sovereign nation would be that it's a trustless system, right? Bitcoin is trustless. Right? You don't need to trust me to know that the Bitcoin transaction is valid, you know? And so maybe could that trustless infrastructure make its way into other things where like, I don't have to worry about trusting people to know that the transaction is secure or that the value exchange is, you know, like arbitrated properly. So I don't know what the, you know, again, what the end state of this is, but it'd be silly to think that AI and blockchain and digital ownership and these sovereign ideas and how we govern each other is not like, you know, forget about the technology, like forget about the ground level. Can you build a website? It's like, can we build something way bigger than that that allows us to continue to be free as people in this world, you know?
Yeah. Big stuff. Big stuff. Well, I mean, like we've gone through the news. We've accomplished our goal. I think it's
sorry if I derailed with like more, like it's hard for me to to separate these things in my head. I've studied like people and philosophy and history for so long that as I see all this digital stuff coming up, it's like, oh, history repeats itself, but it's repeating itself digitally and nobody's seeing the parallels because they've never seen it before. You know, and so like the shackles of slavery look way different in the digital world than they do in the physical world. And it doesn't come with like pain. It comes with like euphoria and dopamine and like influencer status and all sorts of shit. And you're just like, you know, so we give ourselves willingly to these systems, but are they good for us long term? Probably not.
I think you know, low key, that's something I've been battling with for the last few days. Just my brain has just been rattling around like, what are the consequences of all these things that we're doing? And like, you know, you look at these patterns in a philosophical way, whereas I'm looking at it in other ways. You know, I'm seeing regurgitated patterns in other areas and stuff like that, and I've just been like, you know, for lack of a better, just not sleeping, like, because I'm just like, where is this all going? What is it all leading to? And it's almost like a red herring? Is that the right word? But you're thinking, am I thinking too much about something that's not going to? I don't know. It's just. It's a strange world. I'm both excited and terrified all at the same time because
well, it's one of those things too where it's like you can get lost worrying about like who the president of your country is, you know, for instance, Trump, let's say, because it's a shit show in the US right now. And so you could spend all sorts of time getting mad at Trump or supporting Trump or whatever, but like what happens in Washington DC is so far outside of your control. And so same thing with the internet stuff. You can think about all these big, crazy things. And like, it's probably not a bad idea to do that. But where I think we can actually like provide value is going back to the small networks and the communities. And like, how can you make strong, stable communities online, but also in the real world, right? And in the physical world, and that's where you can create a defensible structure. And like, this is something interesting for me because I live in a place where we get hurricanes, every year. And so like last year we had some big hurricanes, and there's a big disconnect when the power goes out and the electricity goes out. And it's like, how do I connect with my friends? And so we're talking about like decentralized communication networks. We're talking about like LoRa networks and Wi-Fi, like walkie-talkies that work over like radio bands that can go miles, rather than like, just having the internet. Like the internet's great, but what happens when that's gone? Or what happens when you can't text your homie because, WhatsApp's down or whatever, right? Like, so that's where I think like, it's great to think about all these big things, but what I usually end up then tying that back to is like, how do you take these thoughts of what's happening and localize that in a way that's meaningful, or do something meaningful with a small group of people that like, hey, if something happens, or if we need X, Y, or Z, or like, if you lose your job, like, hey, can we take care of this person? Or if somebody dies in the family, can we feed this person? Like all these things that again used to be functions of like a church and religion, and like we have to rebuild those things, even if it's not under the guise of like some spiritual leader. Like we have to figure out how to like build community and support each other and like build meaningful connections in the real world, and not find ourselves at the whim of the social feeds or the algorithms or whatever they decide to do, right? Like the only way to defend against those things is to have strong real world networks.
Yeah. Speaking of which, then let's wrap it up there. How can people build strong connections with you? What's
X is probably the best way.
Yeah.
X is probably the place I spend the most time. I'm on Instagram, or you can go over to my website, raymmar.com, and learn more about the different projects I'm working on, or how I see the world.
Nice. Well, it's been a fruitful discussion, and that's the week's AI news. It's been great having you on, bringing that perspective to us. We'll wrap it up there.
Yeah, right on.
Cheers, everyone, for tuning in. And come speak to us. Come give us feedback on all the sessions. We love it. We really appreciate any sort of feedback you have, and we'll see you in the next one.